Getting ready to start chapter 3. Hope you enjoy this. Really gets kind of interesting because of the context of the gold, and Ronnie's growing up a little bit and starting to get his sea legs and working Dandy and Diamond and finding new adventures and thinking about putting a ranch together. Chapter 3. Campbell's Find Some Gold. After being on the trail for a few weeks, the wagon master asked my pa if I could hit anything with that Spencer I was carrying. If he can shoot, could he venture out and do some hunting? We needed meat. Pa said yes, and yes, he can hit what he shoots at. I was given a horse to start hunting for the wagon train. The wagon master gave me a little mouse-colored gelding to use to hunt from. Each day I would ride out in front and off to the side to kill a deer or antelope if I had a chance. This will help fill the cooking pots. On the second day out, I could see what looked like some trees just over a small rise. Tying off my horse, I crawled forward so I could see into the tree line. I had a great spot to wait. There had to be a small stream running behind those trees, so I waited to see if any game came to get a drink. Then they would start back into cover to wait out the day. After about an hour, I could see a doe with her fawn coming out of the trees, heading for the hill to the right that I was waiting on. She looked back, so I figured that there had to be a buck following her or another doe coming behind. Sure enough, a nice spiked buck eased out from the cover. He looked back to the water, and when he dropped his head to take a bite of grass, I pulled the trigger slow and easy. When the smoke cleared, I could see he was down for good. As luck would have it, another doe came out from the trees. She didn't have a fawn with her and started to join the first one heading for the hill to my right. She stomped her foot one time and looked around. That is when the bullet hit her just behind the front leg at the knee. After gutting the two deer, it took a little work to get the horse to stand so I could load both deer over his back and get them tied down. I knew that if I would just follow this stream downhill, I would come to the wagon trail. Leading the horse with the meat for about a mile, I found the trail and could see the dust coming. The lead wagon was about a mile away. When the wagon master rode up, he said, "Well, Ronnie, what do you have? I see you killed a couple of deer to share among the wagon train. Thanks, Ronnie." When the wagon train got low on meat, the wagon master, Mr. Barton, came leading the little gelding for me to go do some hunting. This kept me busy much of the time leading up to our arrival at Salt Lake City. We had missed Indian trouble so far and were hopeful to keep it that way. We were working our way to Salt Lake City, traveling about 25 miles per day. At Salt Lake, we resupplied and headed for Jim Brown's store. The first day out of Salt Lake City, the team of one of our friends quit pulling. They just laid down. It was at the south end of the Great Salt Lake, and it had been hard pulling. The wagons were halfway up to the hubs in sand. Twice that day, Pa had me hook a chain to their wagon to pull them out of deep sand pockets. After doing it a couple times, the wagon master, Mr. Barton, came back and told us we could not stop for longer than a few hours. We had to move on one way or another, which meant we had to get the horses up and ready to go, or we would have to leave the Warren family behind. Pa unhooked our two lead horses. After moving them to the other wagon, we hooked our extra team to it and had the wagon pull in behind ours. We could not make the two tired horses get up. They had pulled their last. Stripping off the gear, Mr. Warren had no choice but to shoot them, and we all resumed driving west, heading for the Nevada border. Later that day, Pa said, "Since we are close to where we are headed, I'm going to sell Maud and Florrie to Mr. Warren. We only need Bill and Sally anyway, and the money will come in handy until we find some gold." It took a few more days to reach the store, Jim Brown's store. After taking a small rest, Pa set about getting supplies to last us for 6 months or so. When Mr. Brown asked Pa, "What are you going to do here?" Pa said, "Well, I just want to find a nice place to settle down. I will see what I want to do later." Mr. Brown said to Pa, "You best keep a close watch for Indians. We have not had any problems with them yet, but you never know. Now you are going into the back country, and you are the first that I know about in that area, so do keep a close watch. We want you to come back from time to time." Ma came over to Mr. Brown and asked if he knew about any Indian raids in the area. He said that he had not heard of any trouble for a long while. Pa told Mr. Brown that he had one of the best rifles made and it could shoot 15 times. Mr. Brown told Pa that he had seen some information on this rifle in a newspaper a few months back. Mr. Brown said that he would order some ammunition for Pa's Henry rifle. With supplies loaded, Pa helped Ma up into the seat. Then he stepped up onto the wagon and slapped the reins on the horse's flanks, and they moved out. From Jim Brown's store, we headed north and a bit east, working our way around the south end of the Ruby Mountain Range. Whenever we came to a creek, Pa and I tested a pan or two for gold. Finding none, we kept moving further northeast. After days of planning, we pulled into a nice flat area about 20 acres in size by a fast-running stream and trees along both sides. The ground sloped up as you got close to the rock face. After close inspection, we discovered a small seep coming from the rock wall. Pa said, "Let's stay here for a few days. Ronnie, you and I will branch out to cover more of the stream." Ma started to set up camp, hoping this would be our final move. That would depend on what we found in this stream. We hit some color right off. Pa got a pan with a couple of small nuggets, and on the same day, I found some flake gold. We have found our new home. Feeling pretty good, after leveling an area a bit larger than what our cabin would be, we set about building our cabin, along with a small barn to store hay and a tool shed on the backside. Pa put the team to work skidding logs down from the hills far enough from our cabin so not to spoil our view. I was in charge of trimming the limbs and peeling bark off the logs. Pa informed me, "If we don't peel the bark from the logs, we will have a mess when we start a fire. There are beetles and other bugs in the bark, just waiting to hatch. With a fire, they will think it is spring and they will run us out of the cabin. We'll be eaten alive." I also had the task of digging out the side of the hill to make a cold room for storage. When I started digging, I found out that the rock was shale, so it made my work much easier. So with a pickaxe and a shovel, I was able to move a lot of rock in just a few days. After I got the cold room dug, Pa showed me how to make a cooler using grain sacks over a wooden frame. Then he let some water drop on the bags to keep them wet. Everything inside of the frame was kept cool. He said, "The air will evaporate the water, and the inside of the bags will be cool." Hot damn! It worked. I used some clay I found along the stream and rocks to dam up an area to make a pool to collect water for the house. We also split logs to make boards to use as the door. Pa showed me how to drive the steel wedges into the tree following the grain. After the first split, I was able to make the boards for the floor and doors and window shutters. We needed to finish the cabin as fast as possible because winter was on its way. It had taken most of the summer to reach Jim Brown's store in our new home. Pa and I set our axes to notching the logs and then using the 2 draw knives to flatten out the high spots on each log so they would fit close together. Ma mixed clay and grass to make a seal between the logs to keep the wind out. She was keeping up with us. Ma was breathing better now and could work a little. The dry climate was helping. We would set a log and she would seal it with clay and grass mixture right behind us. When we got part of the roof on the walls over the kitchen area, she had Pa and I move the stove into her new cabin. It took us another week to finish the roof. Now she had a fireplace to work with and also a working stove out of the weather. She was happy. Talk about feeling good. Now, Ma was going to fix our meals indoors for the first time in 6 months. I had killed a deer that same morning, and she was going to fry up some steaks with wild onions we found along the stream bank and had stored them in the cold room. After our meal, Pa and I continued to split logs to make the last few boards for the doors on the cabin and dugout we used for cold storage. Ma was feeling good. Her breathing had improved and her color was getting better. As she was big on book learning, she made me take time out from panning gold to study. Every week she kept pulling out another book for me to look at. I found out I was good at math. The English was tough, but Ma kept at me, insisting I was going to learn, after I tried to sneak off and hunt instead of doing my book work. She took some bark off me with a belt. After a few times, she put an end to that idea of taking off to go hunting when schoolwork was to be done. As winter started to come our way, Ma suddenly got sick and died. It was just before Christmas, a hard time for Pa and me. Pa was good at telling me about things I would need to know, but he was not much on the books. With just the two of us, we could never find time for me to study. Work and hunting were at the top of the list of things I had to do. After hunting for the wagon train, I had become very good at finding game. Looking back at it when Ma and Pa were together, all those talks now sat heavy on my shoulders. Our little home site was not much to look at, but we made it do. As we washed some gold from the stream, we also kept looking for the main vein. Up to now, we had only panned enough gold to keep us in the basics, like flour, salt, beans, and such. It was a hard 3-day ride to Mr. Brown's store. I still had the team, Bill and Sally, but the wagon had burned during the Indian raid. Therefore, I had to ride Bill if I needed to go any place. Sally did not take to the riding part very well. I tried a few test rides on her, but found it was simpler to just ride Bill. Now I had to take stock of my situation and think back on what Pa had been telling me about how to survive. After Ma died, he had taken the time most every night to talk about all the things I would need to know if he ever was not around. Most of his basic instructions were to take your time and look at the long term, like 1 to 2 years ahead. I remember him telling me that gold is a good thing, but it will change even your best friends when you have gold, and they don't. Never tell anyone that you have very much. Many people find a nugget from time to time, so play that card. What I mean by that is never let anyone know you have more than a few nuggets, and never tell anybody about gold dust. It will only trigger problems. Having gold dust means you are working a claim, and you could have a lot more stashed someplace. You can bet they will come looking. When we find the real gold, he had said, our plan is to travel hundreds of miles to put it in a bank to get some paper money. If anyone ever finds out that we have gold, they will dog us until they find what we have, and then you can be sure they will do their best to take it. Pa's idea of learning was to talk about how to get around in the woods. He told me, watch your back trail at all times. If you feel like you should sit a while to see if someone is coming up behind you, you need to take that extra time just to be sure you are alone. When you want to make a trade for something, be sure you work it, so the other guy brings the idea to you, and never take the first deal. Remember, if they feel it is their idea that you are helping them, they get what they want, and you get what you want. What do I have left? That was the big question now. The Indians missed the cold room that was dug into the bank behind the house where we had set aside some food and ammunition. Therefore, I had rounds for my Spencer carbine. As I had been bringing in the meat for a long time, I knew I could make do for a while with just a few shells. It looked like the cold room was going to be my new home. What was I to do? Should I keep working the gold claim or try to find a job in town someplace? That awful day, when the fire burned out, I looked to see if anything was worth trying to save. It looked bad. I could use some of the cooking pans, although they would take a lot of cleaning. I also found all the tools in the shed on the backside of the barn that had not burned. After gathering up the burned dishes and cooking pans, I went to the stream and started washing them, using sand to get the smoke and ash off. I needed to build a lean-to that would cover the opening of the cold room, and then I also needed to dig it a little bigger so I could put a bed on the back wall. The next few days were spent getting a place to sleep and a covered place to cook. I decided I could build a small fire just inside the root cellar and let the smoke drift out over the top of the door. I had plenty of wood because of what Pa had pulled in and what I had split before winter came. Now I needed to get some fresh meat, but first I needed to repair the corral to hold the horses. I cut new poles to rebuild the side of the corral that had been the barn end wall. With this part of the barn completely burned, digging new post holes I closed in the last side of the corral. Now I could keep the 2 horses close to the dugout. The next morning I put a bridle on Bill and set off to go kill a deer or an elk. Riding back into the timbered hills past the gold claim, I started hunting. With Bill on a picket line, I set off on foot, working my way back further into the timbered hill country. Pa had me hunt in different directions from the cabin so as not to spook the game out of the area. This was the first time I had hunted this area in over 6 months or so. Working my way along the bottom of the draw, I found the trail that the game used to get down to the stream to drink. It was early in the afternoon, so I decided I would just wait. Checking the wind and being well off the trail, I was ready. There was a small shift of wind. Now it was coming down off the mountain into my face. Anything coming to water could not smell me. With just a few shells left, I needed to make the kill with one shot. The sun was getting lower and casting shadows when I heard the crunch of a leaf. I was ready with the Spencer laying across the top of a log, aiming downhill at an open place in the trail. I knew I had to shoot low, like Pa had told me to do when shooting downhill. The deer stopped and stamped a foot, then stopped to look around. Slowly it took one step, then another. The deer was looking right and left, ears searching. Pa had said, "Now, son, just put pressure back on the trigger, but do not pull it. You should not know when it will fire." I sighted just behind the point of the buck's knee, easing pressure back on the trigger. The Spencer spoke and the deer was down. Now I had to get it dressed out and then go get Bill. I can tell you, Bill did not like the smell of blood. In fact, he never liked it. But after wiping my bloody hands on his nose, he finally stood still so I could load the deer. With the deer loaded on Bill's back, I found a high spot so I could get on and hold the deer from falling off during the ride back to the dugout. After hanging the deer on the crossbeam of the lean-to, I started cutting off the back strap to cook it like my ma used to. She would then pound flour, salt, and pepper into the meat and would cook it in bacon fat. I got the fire started in the blackened stove. Dinner would be great tonight. I had to smoke most of the meat and make jerky to preserve it. I found some wire that Pa had in the tool shed and made a wire rack. Then I set up some wood poles beside a large rock face by the lean-to. After building a small fire with some dry wood, I kept adding green wood to the fire to smoke the meat. As smoke rose up the rock wall with the wire in place, I started adding meat to the wire rack. It was getting dark, so I had to build 2 other fires to be able to see enough to cut the meat into thin strips to smoke. The smoke was not doing a good job. The fire was heating the meat enough to start drying it out, but I needed the smoke to add flavor to the salt and pepper. What I needed was a way to hold in the smoke, so I set to building a box around the fire to direct the smoke over the meat, along with the heat. It was working just fine, but there was one more thing I had to do. I found a piece of wood to cover the top, or at least most of the top. It kept most of the smoke inside of the box and around the meat. Working well into the night, I kept watch on the fire and added meat to the rack when needed. The jerky was looking good. By morning, I had a large amount of meat that would last for a while. After getting my jerky finished, I picked up my Spencer and eased up onto the side hill behind the half-burnt barn and found me a spot to keep watch and then get some sleep hidden a short distance from my lean-to. Resting most of the day, I got to wondering how long I could live alone like this. Not knowing what to do and having no one to ask, I decided I would just work the new stream for some gold as soon as I could get things in order here at my camp and hope the Indians didn't come back. Being alone and all, Indians were strong on my mind. At the same time, I was having a hard time dealing with the loss of both my ma and pa.
Well, this is your host, Ron Bell again. I really hope you enjoyed episodes of little Ronnie Campbell coming across the plains and working his way on into the Ruby Mountains in the eastern part of what is now Nevada. I think he awakened to a lot of real good things during that ride. And it's going to be interesting. I hope you enjoy it because Ronnie Campbell is a perfect example of early American exceptionalism. And I think you'll enjoy what's going on now. He's going to be heading into town here pretty soon, and look forward to Chapter 4. I think you're going to enjoy it. Thank you.